I'm afraid to tell you who I really am, because if I tell you who I really am, you may not like it, but that's all I got. I wanted to start with that quote because I felt it was so fitting, especially with me coming up here and asking you to take a risk, right? And I'm over here taking a risk too. So I felt it was great because it was about you and me, and we're going through the same thing. I mean, I'm really putting myself out here. I've never done this before, but like I was trying to tell you in the last video, it's about if you find something that's kind of important, you figure out a way to make it happen. Because I'll be honest, I'm used to my little comfort zone like this, right? I love my little room. My classroom, I can hang out with you, I can get to know you, it's very personal, and then we can talk, and then I can really customize our conversation, right? But more so now, because of the situation we're at, I felt it was more important that I tell you guys just everything in general. So instead of just customizing, just gonna tell you it all. And especially because those comfort zones, aren't they just holding me there? But the biggest growth is how I got out of that comfort zone and I'm here talking to you on this internet, right? I find it interesting because, again, when you find things that you feel are of value, you figure out how to make it work. And that's why I'm here today. And I wanted to expand this to you because I wanted to have you first think for a second. Think about when you were a kid or just recently and you tried something you never thought you would try before. And you're like, oh man, I ain't gonna do this, ain't gonna work. Maybe a sport or something you just didn't want to do. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, this wasn't that bad. And you got better and better and better at it. But what does it really do? It's kind of expanding your mindset about yourself, right? It's having that vision of yourself like, oh, I can do this. And then you start changing and your potential starts growing. And then you start thinking about yourself, well, what else could I do around this, right? And so that's the kind of conversation I wanted to have today about taking risks, right? And I guess I wanted to start off with this guy named Leo Buscaglia. And he had a great, I don't know if it's like a metaphor or quote, but he had a great saying, and it describes it so perfectly. It's basically, to laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To cry is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk involvement. To expose your feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To share your ideas, your dreams with a crowd is to risk losing them. To love is to risk never being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk despair. And to try is to risk failure. But then he goes on to say, but the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. And I understand why, is because, you may avoid suffering and sorrow, but how do you really learn, feel, change, grow, love, and live? And that's what I'm here to talk about, those meaningful risks. Because when we last talked, I asked you, hey, I wanted you just to think about something, anything that's important to you, that's real for you, that will give your life some meaning or special value to it. And I'm gonna let you know today is not a rah-rah, let's psych up. Today is not about, hey, I'm gonna tell you you can do it. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not here for you to assume that. But what I want you to do is I want you to understand the hardest part that I had with my goals and dreams was knowing the next part. It wasn't that, oh, I'm gonna do it. Is I needed to know first that it was actually possible. And it sounds weird, doesn't it? It's like, oh, of course it's possible. But is it really? I mean, think about this. A lot in our past determines our present, does it not? Like every mistake, bump and bruise, everything that you've ever done in your life always comes back to haunt you. You're like, oh, wait. And it's good, you learn from your mistakes, but sometimes it thinks up too much. Like, man, I don't know if I should do this. Maybe it's not worth trying. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Or what I did for a lot of my life is not only did I think of every mistake that I made in the past and why it shouldn't work, then I started making up things as I went along. Maybe this is not going to work. Maybe down the road's not going to work. And I started sabotaging myself. All because I was scared and I realized that I wasn't worthy of it, that it wasn't possible for me. And I'm here to tell you that it is possible. Are you going to get it is another story. but the possibility is always there, and that's what I'm here to talk about. You have to understand that it is possible. And I'll let you know that a lot of times getting it is not the best part of it. The journey of trying to get to it changes your life dramatically in ways you can never imagine, because you started exploring routes that you would have never done. You started changing the ways you would have acted. You start maturing. You start thinking of different actions. Everything's still heading in the same direction. And that is where the growth lies. Yes, if you reach that dream and goal, you are set. You're happy. But the process of getting there is just as worth it. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about. But I didn't want to just talk to you about that, because that is so true, but I also wanted to talk about that you need that why you need to work hard, why you need to have that focus, why you need to have that dream, because you will always run into bumps and bruises. You will always run into walls and hiccups. You will always run into something that will slow you down, to stop you. Everyday problems of life will always come chumming your way. It is unavoidable. It's what they call Murphy's Law. When anything that bad happen will happen, and at the worst moment. But it's how we react to it. How do we change in it? What do we do? And I constantly keep reminding you, what would you want to do? How do you find the way to constantly look for ways to win, especially when there's none that you see? And with that, I wanted to tell you that that's what the risk is about. It is a risk. I'm not going to lie to you. But there is no better joy than heading towards that goal, that risk, knowing that there's a direction. Because it's like if you're in a ship with no directions, you're just floating in the ocean, going whatever way you want to go, right? But if you have a direction, that ship has meaning. And that's the same thing with your life. And a lot of us, and I can only speak for myself, and maybe you feel the same way. When I was in school, my parents said, hey, go to school, get good grades, and study. I was like, okay. How do I study? I don't know. I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't know either. So I tried figuring it out, and I went to school, and I finally figured it out. But then I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted in life. And only when I came to my 30s, I figured out what I wanted. I didn't want that from you, and that's why I'm making this for you, because if you can start now, maybe not even figure out to a year or two, maybe even 3, but then your life changes, and the direction of it's so wonderful, because now you have a dream and you have a direction to follow. And when you have that dream, you understand that edge that you have now. When you run into those everyday hiccups, those bumps and bruises, and those things that are going to make you want to quit, that are going to beat you down, and you're going to say, you know what? Whatever my dream was, it's not worth it. It's not worth the time. It's not important to me. I'm going to do something else that's easier. That's why I'm here to remind you that sometimes the easy route isn't the best route, that you need to stand and fight. And sometimes the best things in life are worth fighting for. And knowing that tomorrow's a better day, that someday will be your day, isn't that worth the risk?